Hi, welcome to another video. This time back in the MG for a bit of an update video really, but the main update is there is no update. I've been spending a lot of time on the XK8 recently. You might have seen some of my other videos, but also it's been holiday season and lots of stuff kind of going on, which prevented me from really looking at this car. But the Goodwood Revival's in a couple of weeks, and when it comes around to that time of year, it always gets me excited about old cars again. So I really thought I owed it to the MG to get it back out on the road for a bit of a run, give it a bit of a stretch of its legs really. So today, update wise, I guess what I'm going to be doing is just making sure it still runs okay. But one of the things I've noticed straight away is actually the clutch is right on the floor, so I don't know if I've got a clutch fluid leak or something like that, but as this drive goes on, maybe we'll find out. But the other thing as well is that because I've never actually dialed in my electronic ignition advance curve properly, I was going to see if I can actually like fine-tune that a little bit. So what I'll do is once I've warmed the car up and taken it for a bit of a drive, I'll get the tablet turned on down here and fire up the electronic ignition app, and we'll see what sort of parameters we can play with in there to fine-tune the ignition. And the method I'm going to use for doing that is essentially just trial and error. So I'm going to drive it along, see if there's any parts of the rev range which feels like it's maybe not free revving enough, and if it's not, then I'll advance the ignition, and then if then I hear a sort of a pinging noise from the engine, then I'll back it off, because that can be quite harmful to the engine if you've advanced your ignition too much. And by doing this for a while and the different sort of loads and conditions on the road, hopefully we'll have a more usable ignition curve that suits the car a bit better. I mean, it's okay at the moment, but it's not ideal. I guess the other thing that I should mention is I have fixed another exhaust leak on the exhaust system. So one of my earlier videos, when I went to the Vista Heritage Sunday Scramble meeting, I had to fix the exhaust leak. And this time I've got exactly the same problem, but it was from a different joint in the exhaust system. So I don't know whether the place I took it, they actually didn't tighten up the joints properly or didn't fit the gaskets properly. But the one I fitted before is fine, and it's actually one which is at the joint between the manifold and the rest of the system was had the same problem. So the gasket had kind of perished and the gas was escaping from there. So I fitted a new one. Seems to be holding up on the driveway and stuff. I couldn't feel any leaks, but after this run we'll see if it's still okay. Fingers crossed it's all right, because I'm running out of spare gaskets now. But yeah, we'll see how we go. So I've been driving this car now for a few minutes down one of my favourite back roads, and it feels really good actually. It's not too bad, and I think the exhaust leak that I had probably caused the car to feel like it was misbehaving more than it was, and actually going through the rev range doesn't sound as bad as it was before. I mean, I think maybe the sound was making it feel a bit worse than it was. And also the clutch is beginning to start behaving itself, so maybe sitting for a while it wasn't, maybe the fluid's done something weird, or there's an air bubble that's developed and it's been pushed out or something like that, I don't know. But yeah, certainly I do enjoy driving this car, and it's a much more connected feeling driving this than the XK8. The XK8 you're kind of cosseted a lot inside, and it's a wonderful car for like making progress, but on a road like this where it's narrow and tight corners, the XK isn't really at home. It's more of a cruiser, whereas this is, although not quick, it's a lot more enjoyable and a lot more involving. Just wish I wasn't stuck behind a scaffolding truck now. Okay, so I've been driving the car for a bit now, and I pulled over to have a look at this ignition stuff. So I've turned on my tablet, so I apologise that the reflection of the gear stick is pretty obvious, and also my gut, but you just have to try and tune that out. So I'll open the ignition app. You have to watch out for BB8 swinging in the ignition keys there. And it starts up, it says, so I want to turn on Bluetooth, yes I do. And then it's searching for my ignition system. So if I turn on the ignition now, it should, in theory, connect to my distributor. Is it going to do it? Is it going to do it? And it's connected. And it's reading the settings and everything. And this is the dashboard, which I've sort of shown in other videos. There's a GPS speedo in the middle, rev counter, amongst other things. So battery voltage and temperature and vacuum and degrees of advance, etc. If you click on the middle icon, it's curves, and this is the advanced curve that I've currently got, and it goes flat when it gets to about 3,500 revs, and then sort of tapers off, which I don't know is actually particularly good. Oh, here we go, degrees, crankshaft degrees. So it stops at about 35 or 34 degrees at 3,500 revs, and actually that kind of coincides with when the engine stops revving as much. So I don't know if I need to run more advanced as the engine gets high up the rev range. I suspect I do. So I might just have a quick look at the internet and see if there's any better sort of curves I can apply. Okay, so I've been messing around with this a bit now, and I've got a curve which looks a bit more smooth. So I don't know if that would translate to a smoother sort of engine running along the road or not, but what I'm going to do now is go for a bit of a drive and find out whether this change that I've made has made any difference. As I said before, if it does start to sort of ping and pink, or whatever the term is for that funny noise, then I'm going to have to back off some of these advanced settings. So you can see on the screen the max advance I'm running at from 3,500 RPM is 37 degrees advance. Now that means nothing to me. People in the know watching this video might be cringing, or they might be thinking that's too much, that's too much advance or too little or whatever. If you know better, then tell me, please tell me, because I know nothing about this sort of stuff. These are figures that I've got off of a website, so they may be right, they may be wrong, but yeah, I'm going to drive it, see how it goes, and listen out for any potential engine harming noises. Fingers crossed, here it goes. Okay, so running along the road with a new advanced curve, it does seem to be a bit more responsive, and it picks up a bit better in the mid-range, which is where I had that weird lower advance before. So there must have been just a wrong reading that I put in before. It does seem to make a bit of a better accelerating car and a better noise. Before it would kind of like hesitate trying to get up into like the upper rev range. That's a bit of a result. I'll keep driving it and see what it feels like. But yeah, I hope I haven't done something wrong and it's going to break my engine. Knowing me, probably. But the other thing that I noticed when I pulled over to do the ignition changes is that I had a good look at my clutch master cylinder reservoir thingy, and it was almost empty, so maybe that's why the clutch is on the floor. I've got maybe a small leak and it's coming out, but I topped up with some DOT4 fluid and the clutch doesn't seem to be on the floor anymore, so hopefully that's all it is. There's some sort of seal somewhere that's weeping, and over time, having not driven the car, it's dried out, and yeah, a bit of fluid's come out, but yeah, it's actually going alright so far. Fingers crossed it stays that way. need to go and see someone who knows what they're doing. I mean, I'm sure there's more I could probably get out of this car. I mean, with me just fiddling with stuff and putting stuff in off the internet, but yeah, I can't believe it. So yeah, any advice from someone who's got a 1, 2, 3 ignition system is make sure you put in the right numbers, otherwise you're going to be limiting yourself. The last thing I wanted to talk about today is an issue which is quite common on MGBs, and that is something called fuel vaporization caused by heat soak. Now the reason for this is, as I mentioned in a previous video, the inlet and exhaust manifolds are on the same side of the engine. So what this means is that when you've been driving sort of enthusiastically or for a long time or on a hot day or something, the heat from the exhaust can heat up the inlet manifold and carburettor to the point where fuel vaporizes before it can get to the engine. On the standard car, where you've got the twin SUs or the other types of carburettors or whatever, you normally get a heat shield between the inlet manifold and the carb and the exhaust manifold, which reduces the problem somewhat. But on my car, with my Weber carburettor and the inlet manifold there, I don't have a heat shield, and occasionally I've had a problem where if I've let the car sit after driving for a while, the inlet manifold gets so hot from the exhaust that you can't start the car. It cranks over fine and fire, and the sparks go and everything like that, but the fuel just isn't getting to the cylinders in a state where it can be combusted. Now this was actually a problem I had on the first proper YouTube video I made, where I was talking about the car for a while, and I went to take it for a drive, and I was trying to start it over and over again, and it's a bit of a sort of blooper reel part of that video right at the very end. But that was the cause. It wasn't because the car was bad at starting or anything like that. It was because the car had been driving, the heat had soaked into the inlet manifold, and the fuel just wasn't getting there. So I've had this sitting around in my sort of parts pile for 5 years now. So the pick date of this was, or nearly 5 years, 1st of December 2014. I've never got around to fitting it, and this is supposed to fit the bottom of my Weber carb and act as a sort of heat shield. I don't know if it works because I've never fitted it, but I was really curious to find out whether anybody else had this problem and if they'd done anything differently about it rather than fitting something like this, because I haven't got any instructions on how to fit this. I think it just bolts to the bottom, but yeah, I don't know which way up it's supposed to go or anything, so it's pretty much a decorative piece at the minute. So I think people have used sort of exhaust wraps or had ceramic coated exhausts and things. I quite like the look of my stainless manifold, so I probably wouldn't want to have a nasty sort of wrap going around it, but I guess that's an option if it becomes more of a problem. I've never had it so much of a problem that I've not been able to start the car eventually, so it's never really been something which has needed sort of drastic attention. But yeah, curious to know if anybody else has got a similar problem to me. That's all there is today really for this video. Thanks very much for watching, and if you made it this far in the video, then well done. Yeah, so in summary, started off today after not driving the car for a while, did a couple of jobs, and it's running perfectly now, apart from the known sort of heat soak issue, which I might address at some point. It's running better than it ever has done, and I'm yeah, it's putting me right in the right mood for Goodwood Revival in a couple of weeks. So I will make a video when I go there. I can't promise it'll be very good because I tend to drink a lot of beer, but I will try and put some sort of video together for people who haven't been before, to give you a bit of a taste of what to expect, or if you're thinking of going, maybe to see what it's all about. But yeah, if I don't make a video before then have a good one, and you'll hear from me in a couple of weeks. Cheers, bye.